Hey, how are
So
you?
with that, speaking of golf attire, this is live from Mackinac, presented by DTE Energy. And one of the most regulated industries in this state is energy, and our friends at DTE Energy. So I'm going to hand it over to Rick and State Representative Joe Aragona.
So, State Representative Joe Aragona, thanks for joining us here. We're going to be talking about regulatory reform, and the representative from Macomb County is the chair of the House Regulatory Reform Committee.
Yep.
So thanks for coming, and it's nice to talk to you in person. We do actually talk on the phone quite a bit.
We do. It's great to be here, Rick, and it's great to be up here on the island. And by the way, I am here representing Macomb Township, just so you know, that's what the MT is for. So.
Okay. Were you out on the golf course?
Yeah, it was it's absolutely beautiful up here. We got a lot of great courses throughout Michigan, and we definitely got a lot of great courses in Macomb County. So if you're ever on that side of the state, let me know. We'll go out, but it's a really beautiful course up here.
Okay. So when we look at regulatory reform, and I guess at least the House Republican regulatory reform strategy, what's at the top of your list?
So a number of things. So first of all, we want to take a look at how can we reduce regulation on a number of different businesses. One being housing, right? There's a little bit of an overburden on the housing industry, a lot of it coming from Eagle. So we want to see what we can do to kind of reduce.
The state's Environmental Regulation Department.
Correct. Department of Environment, Great Lakes,
and
and
Energy.
So we want to see what we can do to kind of reduce that regulatory burden there. There's a number of other things that we kind of want to balance correctly what's coming into the 21st century. For instance, the tobacco industry. There's a lot of illegal products or products that probably shouldn't be on the market coming from China. So we want to right-size that. So there's a number of different things. Regulatory reform is such an all-encompassing type of subject. So there's a lot of different facets that we're going to take a look at over the next 2 years.
Can we talk about housing for just a second?
Sure.
Which is that I understand that you think that reducing regulations on housing will help spur development, and it's a very, very urgent need in Michigan and a lot of other places. But reducing regulation is a bit of a lagging incentive, that it doesn't create activity right away. On the housing side, what would you pair reducing regulation with to try and spur housing development?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So first of all, like you said, we do need to reduce the regulation, right?
I didn't say that. I just know that you said that.
Yeah. So for instance, there has this notion that's been out there that a lot of these housing units have to have their own separate, especially even single housing units, have to have their own like sprinkler system. That's been dancing around out there, and that's been something that we need to make sure that we don't instill in our building code, right? It's those extraneous, those overburdensome things that we need to make sure aren't in the housing code, and some of them that have even slipped through that we need to make sure that we eliminate, because every time you add one of those, that's adding dollars. And the Home Builders Association guesses that roughly every $1,000 you add to a housing unit eliminates about $3,200 people that can actually attain that housing unit, right? So that's the math on that. That's the rough math on that. Now, your question was, you got to reduce regulation. Now, what else can you pair that with? The pairing is these developers need to be able to make the math work that they can make money on these developments. Sometimes when they're going in and making a development, they'll take a look at maybe like the taxes, or they'll think like a length of time on a development is going to take a year or two, and then all of a sudden, they're going through a process with Eagle, or maybe even with the local municipality, and that 2 years turns into 4 years, turns into 6 years. Well, that's a larger amount of time that they need to sit on that property, costing them money, or going to court, costing them even more money, putting them further behind the 8 ball and making those costs higher on that development, right? So, if a developer can say, this is definitely going to take 2 years, this is definitely the cost, they can make the math work, they understand exactly what that cost is going to be, and they know, yes, I can make money, or no, I can't, so I have to abandon this project. But when they take a look at a project and there's an unknown, well, now there's just this huge risk. That's where they start to get shaky, and that's where they don't know whether they should actually be taking that risk or not. We need to make it a lot more clear to them, yes, this is what you can do, or no, this is what you can't do. Once you define what you can and can't do with these developers, let them go and make money. They'll figure out how to put these housing developments on the market.
So you want some more cemented regulations.
No, it's not regulations. I want to reduce the regulations, and then I want to cement what they can and can't do for certain things.
What's an example of something like that where there's a variable?
Sure. Local taxing structure can be kind of a hard one to get around. Sometimes the math can be a little weird for some of these developers. I've heard of even developers who they decide to go put in like a PUD, a planned unit development. Well, all of a sudden the local municipality is asking for solar panels, or they're asking for the housing development not to have any type of gas power within the housing unit. Well, you got to have that for a furnace. You can't not have a gas furnace within Michigan. I mean, that's just not going to work with our winters, right? So those are the types of things that you just can't ask for within a municipality. So you kind of got to hamper what you can and can't ask for when you're doing a deal such as like a PUD, something like that. Taxes, that's another issue. There's a variety of those different types of things that we're tackling, and we're going to try and bring a housing package forward in the fall.
Oh, that's interesting. Are you saying that there should be more state preemption of some local regulations?
I think they just need to be better defined. I think that's what we're going to start taking a look at.
Okay. I want to talk to you about, you are one of, I think, the co-founding members of the Legislative Cryptocurrency Caucus.
Yeah.
And you want Michigan to be a leader in that area of the economy.
Yeah, well, it's an emerging field, right? So, should we be able to invest in cryptocurrency? Should the state be able to invest in cryptocurrency as part of one of its assets? If it does, how safe should it be? How unsafe can it be? Those are the types of questions that I think we need to come together sooner rather than later. That's one of those things that we don't want to be late to the game. We want to be early to the game, define exactly what our strategy is when it comes to cryptocurrency, and put it in law and move forward from there.
What does the state gain by being an early regulator or deregulator of cryptocurrency?
Well, obviously we can gain a lot of market share if we have that asset, right? The downside is it too risky? And that's what we basically, that's really in short what we need to take a look at and better define what we're going to do as a state.
So are you, I hear you talking about the state, and I assume that you mean like state pension funds and things like that, investing possibly in crypto. Are you also talking about it as a share of the state's economy? I assume that would be in the financial services sector? Yeah,
where it would be there. And then also what, I think there's a number of my colleagues that want to take a look at it and say, all right, what is our, rights as citizens to invest or not invest, and just define it. Not that that's ever really been a threat, but just to define it, that just in case anything were to happen in the future, that people have the right to own cryptocurrency.
Well, I guess what sort of occurrence are you thinking about, or is the caucus thinking about, that you have to guard against?
For that crypto Bill of Rights?
Yeah.
To be honest, that's not one of those, that particular idea hasn't really been a passion project of mine. That's been something that's come out as we've started to get together as a crypto caucus. But again, I do believe that if, for instance, Rick, if you want to go out and say, all right, I'm going to own this as either part of my retirement, as part of something I want to trade with, whatever that happens to be, you have the right to do that. I don't see an impact right now of saying, I don't see any threats to that happening, but you never know what can change, and if that's something that we want to instill and say that you have the right to do that, I see no problem with it.
What about protections for consumers who decide to buy or invest in crypto?
Exactly, so that's what that would be.
What would consumer protections in the crypto realm look like, obviously broadly speaking?
Sure, yeah, so there's a variety of things we can look at there. There is some protections to some of the kind of like deep fakes, if you will. There's been a number of stories where grandkid calls grandma Grandma, I need money. You need to send me $2,500. Can you go down to this crypto machine and send me this money? And then all of a sudden they find out it's not actually the grandkid, right? So there's some things that we need to take a look at there to defend against people using this as a fast way to get away with dollars, right? So should you have the ability to own it? Yes. Should we also ensure that people aren't using this specifically to commit certain types of crimes? Also, yes.
Well, I mean, considering all the risks that you're laying out, that historically, one of the things that makes a nation, one of the first things that the United States did in order to turn the Articles of Confederation into a constitutional order was to adopt a common currency. So why are we going down this road when we've got a system that is supposed to offer the sorts of protections that you're talking about?
Again, I think this is more going to be an asset. I don't think this is going to go down the road of replacing our currency or any type of currency.
Right.
I think it's simply going to be, a different way of using our actual currencies. There's cryptocurrencies such as stable coins. Those are different types of things that banks are even developing in order to allow for faster transactions around the world, right? So those are even things that we need to start taking a look at as a state and even as a nation. But those are even some of the different things that we're going to start taking a look at.
I'm just quickly on that because I want to move on to a couple of other things.
Sure.
But and putting you on the hot seat here,
Okay.
It's no secret that the Trump family has its own crypto. Do you think that it would be that is something that politicians ought to stay out of while they're holding office?
Creating their own cryptocurrency?
And offering up investments like that?
Of their own?
Yeah.
I don't know enough to start my own cryptocurrency, so I can't tell you. I can't tell you why somebody would do that even in the first place. So that's not even something we're going down the road of as the crypto caucus. So.
But is it something that politicians holding office who have regulatory powers, should they stay out of this?
Yeah, Rick, I can talk to you about the asset portion. I can talk to you about the stable coins. I can talk to you more about the Bill of Rights. Yeah, about actually creating your own and using that as an asset. I just don't know anything about that. I'm sorry.
Okay. In the few minutes that we have left, I would like to talk about insurance and regulatory framework, because that's something that you've also been active in, which is insurance affordability. What path would you like to see the state take to make insurance more affordable?
In what type of insurance?
Oh, I'm sorry. So auto insurance.
So I think that's something that the state has done a lot of work on. Obviously, we've done some auto insurance reforms. I think there's even some work that we still can take a look at there regarding some of the different codes for some of the different auto no faults. Some of the auto no fault type of healthcare, right? Because there's certain codes that didn't match up. So there's still stuff that we can take a look at to ensure that people are covered. Ensure people are insured while still keeping lower rates.
Yeah,
right.
Because we had the rate, we had the auto insurance reform, and it seems like rates are going back up again into that unaffordable realm.
Yeah.
And there are also still groups of people who aren't getting their injuries covered.
Right. So I think that's something that the insurance committee will be taking a look at over the next year and a half. From the regulatory side, I think what we'll end up taking a look at is more some of these tower issues. Tower, yes.
I mean towing companies.
Correct.
Okay.
So you have some of these towers that kind of show up on the side of the road. They aren't the tower that was called, and they end up towing your car, and then all of a sudden you have this issue where you're trying to get your car back, but hold on, that's not the tower that the insurance was covering, and that's not anybody that you called or the cops called. They just kind of showed up, and now all of a sudden they're holding your car for far more than what your insurance is going to cover, but they know that they have your car almost hostage, right? So they kind of found this regulatory loophole, if you will. So it's something that we're going to be taking a look at, actually with the Towers Association, because you'll often find that sometimes associations, such as like the Towers Association, they are very interested in cutting down and cracking down on their bad actors just as much as you are. So.
Okay. Representative Joe Aragona, thank you so much and sharing your perspectives on the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.